They underestimate you because you don't talk much. They mistake your silence for weakness, but that's their mistake, not your truth. Because quiet doesn't mean soft. Quiet means precise. Quiet means powerful. The loud chase validation. The quiet build empires. The ones who listen, who move slow, who think before they act, those are the ones who win. Because noise fades, but presence dominates. This is the strength of quiet people, and if you understand this power, you'll never need to prove yourself again. Chapter 1. Silence isn't weakness, it's weaponry. Most people talk because they're afraid of silence. They fill the air with noise because quiet exposes their insecurity. They can't handle stillness. It reminds them how little control they have over themselves. But you're not like them. You're learning to use silence as your weapon. You're learning to hold your ground without words. Because real power doesn't shout. Real power watches. Silence isn't weakness, it's intelligence, control, and strategy in motion. When you're silent, you see everything. You see how people think. You see what they're hiding. You see who's insecure and who's centered. You start reading energy instead of reacting to noise. That's the beginning of power. The world confuses silence with submission. But the truth is simple: silence is composure. And composure is control. You don't win by talking more. You win by talking less and meaning every word. Most people can't stand not being heard. They're addicted to attention. They crave validation like oxygen. They speak to prove something. But when you stop chasing validation, you become dangerous. You stop performing for the crowd and start moving for the mission. That's the shift. That's when your silence starts speaking louder than they're shouting. When you're quiet, you give nothing away. You create mystery, and mystery is leverage. People reveal themselves when you stop revealing yourself. They fill the silence with information, emotion, weakness. You just observe. You just collect. And in that space, you gain the upper hand. Power comes from restraint, not reaction. Anyone can talk. Anyone can argue. But few can sit in silence and hold their energy steady. Few can remain unbothered when others are loud and emotional. That's why calm people control the room. The loud ones need to dominate the space with sound. The quiet ones dominate it with presence. Presence doesn't need volume. It needs confidence. It needs control. You have a choice. You can react to every comment, every insult, every provocation, or you can stay grounded, calm, unreadable. That's the choice between being controlled and being in control. When you stay quiet, you keep your power. When you react impulsively, you hand it away. Every emotional outburst is a signal. It says, "You got to me." Silence, on the other hand, says, "You can't reach me." That's power. That's discipline. Let me tell you something. Silence is never empty. It's filled with information. When you stop talking, you start noticing. Body language, tone, hesitation, overcompensation. You start seeing what people are really saying, not just what they claim. That's why you can't be manipulated easily when you're silent. You see too much. The more you listen, the more control you gain. The more you observe, the smarter you become. Because silence sharpens perception. And perception wins battles before they begin. You don't need to announce your moves. You don't need to explain your plans. You don't need to prove you're working. Results will speak for you. That's the power of quiet execution. Talkers broadcast intent. Quiet people move in stealth. You never see them coming until it's too late. That's how the disciplined win. Silence also protects your focus. When you stop trying to explain yourself, you stop wasting energy. You stop caring about opinions. You stop defending your goals to people who will never understand them. And suddenly, all that energy gets redirected into action. You become sharper. You move faster, not in words, but in progress. Remember this, it's not about being noticed. It's about being effective. It's not about validation. It's about victory. The loud chase attention. The quiet chase growth. You have a choice every day between proving and improving. Proving is loud. Improving is silent. Choose silence. Choose focus. That's the key. There's another truth you need to understand. Silence exposes weakness in others. It makes people uncomfortable. They start to fill the gap with nervous energy, excuses, explanations. That's when they reveal everything. That's when you win without doing a thing. Try it. Next time someone argues with you, say nothing. Next time someone insults you, stay calm. Next time someone tries to bait you into reacting, pause. Watch how your silence unnerves them. Watch how they stumble, overshare, or apologize. That's not coincidence. That's control. You're not ignoring them. You're mastering yourself. And self-mastery is the highest form of power. But don't confuse silence with passivity. Being quiet doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting with precision. You're not avoiding action, you're delaying it until it matters. You're conserving energy until the timing is perfect. Because action without timing is waste. And noise without intent is weakness. You don't need to speak to prove confidence. You don't need to react to prove strength. You don't need their attention to have control. You just need awareness. You just need intention. You just need to stay centered when others lose themselves. That's the secret the world overlooks. Quiet isn't submission. It's supremacy. It's the confidence to not need constant validation. It's the inner knowing that you're already in control. So here's what you do. Train yourself to pause before you speak. Count to 3 before you respond. Ask yourself, does this reaction serve my mission or my ego? If it's ego, stay silent. If it's mission, speak with clarity. That pause, that discipline, that's your weapon. You're not avoiding conflict. You're mastering response. You're not scared to speak. You're choosing when to strike. Every word becomes deliberate. Every action becomes precise. That's how quiet people win, not by chance, but by control. Remember this, silence gives you time to think. Thinking gives you clarity. Clarity gives you power. That's the chain. That's the formula. Most people break it because they talk before they think. You won't. You're learning restraint. You're learning presence. You're learning that silence is not the absence of power. It's the source of it. So the next time you walk into a room full of noise, don't compete with it. Stand in your calm. Let your stillness speak. You don't have to prove anything. You already know who you are. And the room will feel it without a single word. That's how quiet people lead. That's how quiet people win. Not by volume, by vision. Not by chaos, by control. You don't need their attention to have control. You need discipline. You need awareness. You need silence. You've learned that silence isn't weakness. It's weaponry. And you just loaded the first round. Now that you understand the power of holding your tongue, it's time to learn something even more dangerous. How to turn your quiet into presence. Chapter 2. The loud are often lost. Noise is insecurity turned up to maximum volume. Remember that. The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. They're not speaking from power, they're speaking from fear. They're performing. They're projecting. They're trying to convince the world of something they don't believe themselves. When someone needs to be heard constantly, what they're really saying is, "Please notice me." That's not strength. That's desperation. And if you're honest, you've done it too. We all have. We've all tried to talk our way into being respected. But real respect isn't talked into existence. It's earned through results. The loud are often lost. They mistake noise for progress. They think movement is momentum. They think attention is validation. But attention fades. Validation fails. And when the noise dies down, what's left? Usually nothing. You have a choice to be heard or to be effective. That's the difference between the loud and the strong. One performs. The other produces. One is addicted to applause. The other is devoted to purpose. That's the key. Real strength doesn't need validation. It needs vision. Vision doesn't talk, it builds. It stays focused, stays quiet, because it knows talk without action is just ego. And ego always needs an audience. But let's make something clear. Being loud isn't just about volume. It's about energy. It's about how much of yourself you give away trying to be noticed. You can be loud through over-explanation. You can be loud through oversharing. You can be loud through constant proving. Loudness isn't always sound. It's insecurity. And every time you over-explain, every time you defend your dream, every time you try to make others understand your worth, you lose power. You leak energy. You hand control to people who haven't earned it. You don't need their permission. You don't need their applause. You don't even need their understanding. What you need is focus. What you need is restraint. What you need is quiet discipline. Because discipline always speaks louder than words. Quiet people conserve energy. Loud people waste it proving they exist. You have to decide which side you're on. When you're quiet, you're storing power. You're building pressure. You're observing and learning. You're mastering yourself. And then, when it's time to move, you move with precision. But the loud move constantly. They're always showing, always talking, always needing validation. And when you need to prove yourself every day, you never build consistency. You never master stillness. You never grow depth. It's not about being noticed. It's about being undeniable. It's not about being seen, it's about being solid. Quiet people build something real. Loud people build illusions. And that's why the loud are often lost. They can't sit still long enough to build anything that lasts. Let me give you a truth that might sting. If you always have to announce your grind, you're not grinding hard enough. If you constantly need to prove your worth, you don't believe in it yet. You don't have to post your discipline. Live it. You don't have to prove your mindset, embody it. You have a choice. You can perform for the crowd or practice for your craft. You can chase applause or chase mastery. You can be loud and shallow or quiet and unstoppable. The ones who win in the end are rarely the ones talking about it. They're too busy working. They're too busy evolving. They're too busy becoming the kind of person that silence protects and success amplifies. That's the key. Let your results make the noise. Noise is easy. Stillness is hard. It takes discipline to stay quiet when everyone else is showing off. It takes control to stay calm when everyone else is performing. It takes vision to focus when everyone else is distracted. Don't underestimate the power of being underestimated. When you're quiet, people think you're harmless. They don't see you coming. And by the time they realize your strength, it's too late. Quiet confidence doesn't seek permission. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't ask for validation. It just moves methodically, deliberately, relentlessly. That's the discipline of the focused. They don't waste time trying to be impressive. They're too busy becoming impactful. Look at the world. The people who make the most noise often have the least to say. They live for reaction, not for purpose. They post everything, brag about everything, and then wonder why they feel empty. You can't fill your soul with applause. You can't build character on compliments. The more you chase approval, the weaker you become. Stop performing for approval. Start producing for impact. Every time you resist the urge to announce your progress, you gain power. Every time you stay silent instead of defending your dream, you gain control. Every time you choose restraint over reaction, you grow stronger. That's how emotional control becomes practical. That's how discipline becomes visible. You don't need to say a word. people feel it. Here's your practical rule. For the next 30 days, talk less about what you're doing. Don't explain your plans. Don't justify your moves. Just do the work. Let the results speak for you. If someone doubts you, let them. If someone mocks your silence, let them. Because while they're talking, you're building. While they're seeking validation, you're creating transformation. And that's the ultimate flex, progress without performance. You don't need their attention. You need alignment. You don't need their applause. You need accountability. You don't need to shout. You need structure. That's how you separate yourself from the noise. The loud are often lost because they spend their lives trying to be seen. The quiet find themselves because they spend their lives trying to grow. Understand this: real power doesn't need to prove itself. It just exists. It doesn't need to be loud because it's already certain. And certainty is silent. When you walk into a room with quiet confidence, people feel it. You don't need to announce who you are. Your presence does that for you. That's what the loud never understand. You don't become powerful by being heard. You become powerful by being unshakable. So stop explaining. Stop performing. Stop proving. Just move in silence. Because silence backed by execution becomes authority. You don't need their permission to rise. You don't need their validation to matter. You don't need to be loud to be legendary. You just need to keep your head down, your heart steady, and your discipline sharp. That's how you lead yourself. That's how you win quietly. You've learned now that loudness is often confusion in disguise. That calm, quiet energy is not weakness. It's control. You've stopped performing for attention. Now it's time to learn what to do with that focus you've earned. Because silence without purpose is wasted potential. You've built composure. Now you'll build direction. Chapter 3. Observation is power. Silence isn't empty. It's information. While others talk, you study. While they reveal themselves, you learn. Observation is power. Most people think power comes from dominance, from being seen, from being loud, from being first. They're wrong. Power comes from awareness, from precision, from seeing what others miss. Quiet people don't just listen, they read. They read energy. They read body language. They read the space between words. They read what people mean, not just what they say. That's the edge. That's the advantage of stillness. You have a choice to react or to read. And the difference between the two is everything. Here's the truth. Most people talk themselves out of power. They reveal too much. They explain too much. They give away their strategy without even knowing it. But the quiet person, the observer, never gives it away. They gather data. They watch behavior, not words. Because behavior is the truth that words try to hide. You don't need to predict people, just study them. They'll tell you everything if you're patient enough to listen. That's the key. When you're quiet, you become dangerous, not because you intimidate, but because you understand. And understanding gives you control. Observation gives you leverage. Think about it. How do the best negotiators win? Not by talking more, by talking less. They let the other side reveal their hand first. They create silence so the other person fills it. And in that space, truth leaks out. That's what you need to master, the silence between sentences. The pause before someone answers. The hesitation in their tone. That's where reality lives. You don't need to interrupt people to know who they are. They'll show you if you're watching closely. Observation is not passive. It's active. It's deliberate. It's strategy. You're not waiting, you're gathering. You're collecting patterns. You're identifying motives. You're learning who's disciplined and who's desperate, who's confident and who's compensating, who's aligned with you and who's using you. That's how you win without fighting. That's how quiet becomes power. Let me make this clear. Talking is easy. Listening is rare. But seeing? Seeing requires discipline. Seeing requires detachment. It requires you to stop assuming, stop judging, stop needing to respond. Most people don't see because they can't stop reacting. They're too emotional to observe. They're too impatient to notice the details. You have to reverse that. You have to train your mind to slow down while the world speeds up. You have to become the calm eye in the storm. You watch, you process, you decide when to act and when to stay still. That's the discipline of an observer. That's the foundation of real power. Observation gives you time, and time gives you control. You see what's coming before it arrives. You recognize patterns before they repeat. You learn people's habits, their triggers, their tells. When you see patterns, you stop being surprised. When you stop being surprised, you stop being reactive. When you stop being reactive, you become unstoppable. You have a choice. You can live blind, rushing, guessing, overreacting. Or you can live aware, watching, analyzing, adapting. The quiet person always wins long-term. Because while everyone else is performing, the observer is preparing. Replace impulsive speech with conscious scanning. That's your first step. Before you respond, pause. Before you argue, watch. Before you post, think. You don't need to comment on everything you notice. You don't need to expose that you understand. Sometimes power is pretending you don't. Hold your insights. Guard your awareness. Because information is leverage and silence gathers it. When you start observing, you'll notice the world differently. You'll notice who interrupts the most, they crave control. You'll notice who agrees too quickly, they fear rejection. You'll notice who talks endlessly about themselves. They're desperate for validation. And then you'll notice yourself. When you feel the urge to speak, to fill space, to defend yourself, you'll recognize it as fear too. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of not matching. That's when you remember you don't need their permission. You don't need their understanding. You have power in silence because you trust yourself enough not to explain. Observation is not about judgment. It's about awareness. You're not collecting data to control others. You're collecting data to control yourself. When you see clearly, you choose clearly. You don't walk into traps because you've seen them before. You don't fall for manipulation because you recognize the pattern. You don't burn out chasing people's approval because you've already read their motives. It's not about paranoia, it's about precision. You don't assume. You verify. You don't guess. You watch. You don't hope. That's emotional intelligence in motion. You want to build this as a skill? Start with the smallest moments. In a conversation, practice listening all the way through before responding. Notice people's tone, not just their words. Notice what changes in their body when they talk about certain topics. Notice where their eyes go when they're uncomfortable. Then expand that skill. Watch your environment. Notice who stays calm under stress and who collapses. Notice who complains often and who quietly executes. Notice who stays the same when no one's watching. Because that's the real data, not what people post, but what they repeat. Observation gives you clarity. Clarity gives you calm. Calm gives you control. When you live this way, nothing surprises you anymore. Not because you're cynical, but because you're conscious. You've trained yourself to see the truth before it hits you in the face. You've trained yourself to slow down enough to catch reality in motion. That's why the observer always has the advantage. They're never rushing to prove, never racing to respond. They're steady, they're aware, they're ready. You don't need to match chaos with chaos. You need to master awareness. That's what makes you unshakable. So here's your daily practice. Every morning, remind yourself, today, I will watch more than I speak. Carry that into every interaction. Resist the urge to fill silence. Instead, use it to see deeper. When something triggers you, don't react. Pause. Ask yourself, what's really happening here? What pattern is this? When you observe, you reclaim control. You'll start to see things others miss. Opportunities, red flags, energy shifts, timing cues. And when you act, your actions will be sharper, cleaner, and 10 times more effective. That's the reward of observation accuracy. It's not about emotion. It's about awareness. It's not about reaction. It's about response. It's not about noise. It's about noticing. Observation is power. So understand this, you don't win by being seen first. You win by seeing first. You don't dominate by speaking louder. You dominate by understanding deeper. You don't control others, you control the moment. And that's enough. Every great strategist, every great leader, every quiet conqueror, they all share one thing. They see more than they say. You have that same ability. You just have to stop rushing long enough to notice. You've learned now that silence is a weapon, and observation is how you sharpen it. You don't react. You read. You don't chase noise. You control it. Now that you can see clearly, it's time to learn how to move clearly, because vision without timing is wasted power. Chapter 4. Calm is control. Chaos doesn't destroy you. Your reaction to chaos does. The quiet don't stay calm because they were born that way. They stay calm because they trained that way. They built composure through repetition, through control, through conscious restraint. That's the key. Calm isn't passive. Calm isn't weakness. Calm is dominance in slow motion. It's control disguised as stillness. When everyone else panics, the calm one leads. When everyone else reacts, the calm one decides. That's power. That's real control. You have a choice every time pressure hits. You can react or you can respond. You can let emotion drive you or you can take the wheel. That's the difference between the people who burn out and the ones who rise. Because control isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. It's about using your emotions as fuel, not fire. The emotional storm never moves the grounded. The grounded observe the storm. They let others get lost in it while they stay centered. You've seen this before. In the workplace, in relationships, in competition. The loudest person loses their temper. The calm one wins. The emotional one argues. The calm one listens and decides when to strike. That's composure. That's command. When you stay calm, you create space, and space is where power lives. That pause before reacting, that's control. That slow breath in conflict, that's control. That choice not to respond to provocation, that's control. You don't need to prove calmness with words. You prove it with stillness. Because calm isn't about being unbothered. It's about being strategic. It's knowing that movement without intention is weakness, and silence under pressure is strength. You have to train this. It won't come naturally, because the world trains you to react. Everything around you pushes you to move faster, speak sooner, shout louder. But that's how you lose control, by letting the outside world dictate your inside state. You can't lead your life if the world leads your emotions. You have to flip that power dynamic. You train calm the same way you train muscle, through tension and release. When tension rises, breathe slower. When anger spikes, speak later. When confusion hits, move less. That's the drill. Every time you do it, you rewire your instinct. You remind yourself, I control my state. I control my pace. Because pace is power. The one who controls the rhythm controls the room. The one who controls the tone controls the outcome. You have that power if you stay calm. Think of a storm. The surface is chaos, wind, rain, lightning. But deep beneath the ocean, stillness, total calm. That's what you're training to be, the depth, not the surface. Your calm is not denial. It's depth. It's knowing that storms pass, but your foundation remains. That's not avoidance. That's awareness. Because calm doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't fold. You feel the anger, but you don't act from it. You feel the fear, but you don't speak from it. You feel the pressure, but you don't show it. That's what separates professionals from amateurs, leaders from followers, masters from reactors. Most people think calmness is personality. It's not. It's discipline. It's built in the small moments. It's built in traffic when you want to yell but don't. It's built in arguments when you want to win but choose peace. It's built in business when others rush, but you hold your pace. It's not about being cold. It's about being clear. It's not about bottling emotion. It's about channeling it. It's not about apathy. It's about accuracy, because emotion clouds accuracy, and accuracy wins. You can't make precise decisions in panic. You can't see clearly through fog. Calm cuts through that. Calm gives you clarity, and clarity gives you control. You have to learn to identify your triggers. Know what pulls you out of control. Disrespect, uncertainty, failure, rejection. Because if you don't identify them, they'll control you. When you know your triggers, you can anticipate them. When you can anticipate them, you can neutralize them. That's emotional dominance. That's the discipline of calm. So the next time you feel triggered, stop. Don't speak. Don't post. Don't move. Breathe. Count to 3. Ask yourself, what outcome do I want here? Because reaction gets attention, but calm gets results. Power sits in composure. Always, people respect the one who doesn't flinch. They trust the one who stays steady. They follow the one who doesn't break when things get hard. You don't need to tell people you're calm. They'll feel it. Your energy will say it for you. Calm energy is contagious. It changes the temperature of a room. It makes people slow down. It makes chaos lose its edge. That's leadership. That's presence. That's control. Understand this. The opposite of calm isn't anger. It's chaos. And chaos kills precision. When you're reactive, you lose awareness. When you lose awareness, you lose options. When you lose options, you lose control. Calm is how you get those options back. Calm is how you stay aware enough to see your next move. That's why the calm win, not because they're emotionless, but because they're in control of emotion. It's not about being perfect. It's about being poised. It's not about being silent. It's about being strategic. It's not about slowing down. It's about stabilizing. That's the discipline. So here's your practice. Each day, challenge yourself to pause once longer than you normally would. When someone disrespects you, hold your breath. When you feel urgency, slow your words. When the world rushes, hold your pace. You're teaching your nervous system to stay grounded under pressure. You're training your body to match your intention, not your emotion. That's how you win. That's how you build composure that can't be shaken. You'll notice something powerful. The calmer you are, the less mistakes you make. The calmer you are, the more people listen when you speak. The calmer you are, the less control others have over you. Because calm is the ultimate flex. It shows you've already won inside. You don't need to dominate people. You need to dominate yourself. You don't need to move faster. You need to move deliberately. You don't need their permission to stay grounded. You just need to remember, calm is control. The world rewards the one who can stay centered when others lose balance. That's you. That's the work. So from now on, make it a rule. When pressure rises, slow down. When emotion spikes, get still. When chaos starts, control your breath. Because the one who stays composed controls the chaos. Always, you've mastered silence. You've learned observation. You've built calm. Now it's time to turn that control outward, to direct it, to command with precision. You're done just surviving the storm. It's time to navigate it like a leader. Chapter 5. Presence over performance. You don't need to perform to have power. You don't need to prove yourself to have presence. You don't need to be loud to be seen. That's the lie most people live by, that attention equals power. It doesn't. Presence beats performance. Every time. Because presence is felt before it's seen. It's not noise. It's not effort. It's energy. And energy doesn't need an introduction. When you walk into a room calm, grounded, and certain, people notice. Not because you're performing, but because you're aligned. That's the key. Presence doesn't come from what you do. It comes from who you are when you stop pretending. Most people are addicted to performance. They perform confidence. They perform success. They perform importance. But performance fades. Presence lasts. Performance needs validation. Presence doesn't care. When you're performing, you're trying to be seen. When you're present, you're being felt. That's a massive difference. Presence doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't prove. Presence stands still and everything around it adjusts. You've seen this before. The quiet person in the meeting who says nothing, but everyone waits for them to speak. The leader who barely raises their voice, but their words shift the entire room. The competitor who doesn't taunt, but dominates through precision and focus. That's presence. It's not about volume. It's about vibration. You can't fake that. You can only build it. You have a choice every day, to perform or to be, to chase or to command, to impress or to influence. When you perform, you leak power. When you're present, you collect it. Because performance is external. It feeds on attention. But presence is internal. It feeds on alignment. You don't need their permission to be powerful. You just need to stop performing for them. That's the discipline. Presence comes from self-ownership. From knowing who you are and not apologizing for it. From walking into every room knowing you belong there, not because they said so, but because you decided so. You can't buy presence. You can't copy it. You build it through stillness, through confidence, through truth. You build it by removing the need to perform. So stop over-explaining. Stop overcompensating. Stop chasing validation that doesn't matter. Every time you explain yourself when you don't need to, you perform. Every time you try to look confident instead of being confident, you perform. Every time you talk too much to prove you know something, you perform. Performance is insecurity dressed as effort. Presence is power dressed as calm. That's the shift you need to make. Here's the secret. Presence comes from preparation and principle. You can't be grounded if you're not clear. You can't be certain if you're not aligned. So prepare yourself internally before you ever walk into a room. Know your values. Know your goals. Know your boundaries. That's your anchor. When you're anchored, you don't drift into performance. You don't adjust your behavior to be liked. You don't mold your voice to match the room. You become the standard. That's what presence does. It sets tone without words. It's not about being seen. It's about being felt. You've met people who talk endlessly, but nothing sticks. You've also met people who speak once, and you remember it for years. That's presence. It's when energy communicates louder than words. And here's what's powerful: presence is contagious. When you are grounded, others calm down. When you are focused, others adjust their tone. When you are silent, others fill the space nervously because they feel your energy. That's not arrogance. That's authority. Authority doesn't shout. Authority doesn't chase recognition. Authority simply is. And you can't fake that with performance. So how do you build presence? Here's the formula. Depth over drama. Depth in awareness. Know what you're feeling. Know what you're projecting. Because presence is self-awareness turned outward. If you're chaotic inside, your energy will betray you. Depth in intent. Know why you're doing what you're doing. Don't walk into a room trying to win approval. Walk in with purpose. People feel that difference instantly. Depth in discipline. Train yourself to slow down. Pause before you speak. Look before you move. Listen before you answer. Presence is built in the pause. Every pause is a signal. It says, I'm not rushed. I'm in control. That's how you separate yourself from the reactive. That's how you project command without a single word. Remember, the need to perform is rooted in fear. Fear of being overlooked. Fear of being underestimated. Fear of not matching. But the truth is, you don't need their attention to matter. You matter when you stop begging for attention. You matter when you stand firm in silence and let your energy speak. It's not about performance. It's about presence. It's not about approval. It's about alignment. It's not about being liked. It's about being felt. That's the key. When you stop performing, you free your power. You reclaim your energy. You stop burning it on image and start investing it in impact. Let your results make the noise. Let your energy speak the truth. Let your calm confidence fill the room before your words ever do. Because words can lie, but energy can't. And that's what people remember. Not what you said, but how you made them feel. Presence does that. Performance never will. You have to start living from center, not surface. That's where your real power comes from. When your mind, body, and intention are aligned, you radiate certainty. People can sense it even when you're silent. You don't have to force it. You don't have to fake it. You just have to be it. That's what the quiet understand. They don't rush to prove. They don't compete for attention. They don't perform. They walk in grounded, calm, focused, and everyone feels it. Presence beats personality every single time, because personality entertains. Presence transforms. So here's your practice. Every day, train yourself to walk slower, speak less, listen longer. Before every conversation, ground your breathing. Before you enter any space, remind yourself, I don't need to perform. I just need to be. That single thought will change your energy. You'll project calm instead of chaos, confidence instead of neediness, authority instead of effort. That's what presence does. It shifts the atmosphere before you even speak. You don't need their permission to own the room. You just need to own yourself. That's the key. Presence is your quiet weapon. It doesn't shout. It radiates. It doesn't demand attention. Commands it. When you walk in calm and grounded, you project confidence that words can't imitate. That's how you lead without performing. That's how you dominate without noise. Because power doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives and everyone feels it. You've learned silence as strategy. You've mastered calm as control. And now you've discovered the force of presence, the quiet authority that commands without effort. But power isn't just what you project. It's also what you protect. You can't maintain presence if you're giving your energy to everything and everyone. You need to guard it. So next, we go deeper. You've built presence. Now it's time to protect peace. Chapter 6. Discipline is louder than words. Everybody talks about what they're going to do. Few actually do it. That's the difference. That's the separation. Loud people announce goals. Quiet people execute them. Because real discipline doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It just needs consistency. That's the key. You don't get stronger by talking about training. You get stronger by showing up when nobody's watching. You don't earn respect by declaring your dreams. You earn it by working when the noise dies down. Action is the only volume that matters. Most people want the reward of discipline without the repetition. They want the results of silence but the attention of noise. But you can't have both. You have to choose. You can be loud or you can be legendary. You can perform or you can progress. You can't chase both the spotlight and self-mastery, because discipline thrives in the dark. Discipline lives in quiet repetition, when no one cares, when no one claps, when no one believes. That's where transformation happens. The disciplined don't move to impress, they move to improve. They don't need your permission to train. They don't need to post their progress to prove their commitment. They know that silence compounds. They know that every unseen effort adds up. They know that when it's time to show results, the work will speak louder than any announcement ever could. That's the mindset of quiet achievers. They don't waste time convincing people they're serious. They're too busy being serious. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not social media friendly. It's repetition. It's boredom. It's silence. But that's the work that builds peace and power. Because discipline isn't about hype, it's about habits. And habits are what shape destiny. So stop explaining your plans. Stop sharing your goals just to feel motivated. Stop looking for approval before you take action. You don't need their permission to commit. You don't need their belief to begin. You just need your own consistency. That's the key. Think about it. The world is full of talkers, full of dreamers, full of people waiting for the right moment. They talk about what they'll do next month, next year, when it's easier, when they have time. But time doesn't wait. Discipline doesn't negotiate. If you're not consistent now, you won't be consistent later. You have a choice. Talk about your goals or train for them. The quiet choose training. The loud choose talking. And that's why the quiet rise while the loud repeat. Here's the truth. Discipline doesn't need attention because it creates results. And results demand attention automatically. You don't have to brag about discipline. You just have to let it build your credibility. Because when people see you transform, they don't need convincing. Your results speak. Your energy changes. Your life becomes the proof. You don't need to talk about it anymore. That's power. That's self-leadership. That's what the disciplined understand. You want to know what separates the quiet winners from the noisy pretenders? It's this. The quiet ones commit privately. They don't announce every effort. They don't look for hype. They just lock in. They know that consistency creates confidence. Every time you show up, when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, when it's unrecognized, you build something no one can take. Trust in yourself. That's what discipline gives you. Discipline is the most honest form of self-respect. It says, I don't break promises to myself. That's the foundation of every great life, the ability to rely on your own consistency. You have to understand this. Discipline isn't about control, it's about freedom. It's not about punishment, it's about preparation. Because when you're disciplined, you don't live in reaction. You live in rhythm. You don't wait for motivation. You move on principle. That's the key difference. The undisciplined live by emotion. They start when they feel good, quit when they feel bored, and blame the world when they fall short. The disciplined move by commitment. They do it whether they feel ready or not. That's why they win. Because discipline isn't about feelings. It's about foundations. And foundations don't shake when life gets noisy. Let's talk behavior. If you want to embody this, here's what you do. 1. Speak less. Act more. Before you announce a goal, ask yourself, do I want progress or attention? If it's progress, keep it private. If it's attention, you've already lost momentum. Every word you speak about your plans drains energy from your action. Stop leaking your potential through conversation. 2. Build ritual, not hype. Discipline is built through structure, not emotion. Create non-negotiable habits. Wake up early. Train your body. Train your focus. Do the work when you least want to. Emotion fades. Ritual remains. 3. Let results speak. Say nothing. Post nothing. Show up. Do the work. Disappear if you have to, because when your actions start showing results, people will talk. You won't need to. Discipline is the loudest silence in the world. It's the quiet that echoes. It's the stillness that builds storms. It's the repetition that writes legacies. You don't need noise to be powerful. You just need consistency. Remember this: the disciplined don't burn energy proving. They burn energy progressing. That's how they stay undefeated, not because they talk the loudest, but because they move with purpose. You have that same choice. Right now, you can keep chasing attention or you can start earning respect. And respect doesn't come from performance. It comes from discipline. It's not about what you promise. It's about what you practice. That's the key. Every time you commit to silence, you build focus. Every time you say less, you gain energy. Every time you choose discipline over discussion, you grow stronger. Stop explaining. Stop proving. Stop performing. Start building. Let the quiet of your grind be the loudest thing about you. Let the discipline in your daily life speak for you louder than your words ever could. You don't need the world to believe in you. You need to become undeniable. And that's what discipline does. It doesn't shout. It shows. It doesn't ask. It delivers. It doesn't seek attention. It earns respect. That's the difference between noise and power, between effort and execution, between talkers and doers. Be the doer. Be the disciplined. Be the quiet one who moves mountains while the world scrolls past. Because action, silent, relentless action, is the only sound success makes. You've learned how silence can be strength. You've learned that presence beats performance. And now, you've understood that discipline is louder than words. But there's another layer to quiet power, one that amplifies everything you've built so far. You've learned to do without noise. Now you'll learn to endure without breaking. Because even discipline gets tested. And when it does, the calm ones don't fold, they wait. Chapter 7. Patience is the quiet advantage. Loud people rush. Quiet people calculate. That's the difference. Impatient minds move fast and break themselves. Disciplined minds move slow and build empires. You've heard the saying, patience is a virtue. Wrong. Patience is a weapon. It's leverage in motion. It's how you win in silence while everyone else burns out. Because the truth is simple. The impatient react, the patient dominate. That's the key. Patience isn't passive. It's precision. It's not about waiting around. It's about waiting intelligently. While everyone else jumps, you observe. While they chase validation, you collect data. While they get emotional, you stay composed. You turn time into information. You turn silence into strength. You turn waiting into strategy. That's what most people never understand. They think moving fast equals progress. But fast doesn't mean forward. You can move fast in circles. You can hustle yourself into exhaustion. You can react your way right out of alignment. Speed without patience is chaos. Patience without purpose is stagnation. But patience with strategy, that's power. You have to learn to pause before you move, to breathe before you speak, to evaluate before you engage. That pause, that single beat of control is where you take your power back. Because in that moment, you're not reacting. You're responding. And response is intelligence in action. That's the difference between emotional amateurs and mental professionals. The loud get triggered. The quiet get tactical. You have a choice. You can live your life reacting to everything, or you can step back, watch, and plan your next move with precision. That's how patience wins. Understand this: patience isn't weakness. It's restraint under command. It's the refusal to waste energy. It's the discipline to let noise burn itself out before you act. The impulsive need to do something right now. The patient know the power of doing nothing until it matters. That's the skill of control. That's the art of timing. Because sometimes silence hurts more than words. Sometimes waiting hits harder than force. Sometimes walking away teaches louder than shouting. When you understand that, when you truly live that, you become untouchable. Most people are addicted to instant gratification. They want results without the process. They want recognition without repetition. They want growth without grind. That's why they fold under pressure. Because they've built their identity around urgency, not endurance. But the quiet ones? They play the long game. They know that every delay can be used. Every setback can be studied. Every waiting season can be turned into strategy. That's the mindset shift you must adopt. You have to stop seeing waiting as wasted time. Waiting is training time. That's when you sharpen your awareness. That's when you build emotional control. That's when you prepare for what others aren't ready for. That's how patience turns into leverage. Let's make this practical. When everyone else reacts fast, you wait. When everyone else speaks first, you listen. When everyone else posts impulsively, you observe. That pause is your advantage. Because that delay is where you gather power. You read the situation. You assess the players. You see patterns forming before anyone else does. That's what gives you the edge. While they act off emotion, you act off information. While they waste energy proving something, you conserve energy becoming something. That's the quiet advantage. You don't need to win today. You need to position yourself to win always. That's what patience allows you to do. Patience separates thinkers from reactors, builders from talkers, leaders from followers, because true power never rushes. Look at nature. Mountains don't hurry, yet they outlast everything. Oceans don't panic, yet they shape continents. Power doesn't need speed. Power needs time. It's not about urgency. It's about endurance. Every great transformation you admire took longer than expected. Every strong person you respect endured seasons of silence, delay, and doubt. But they didn't quit. They didn't rush. They stayed patient and consistent. That's how they turned pressure into presence. Let's talk about behavior, what you do with this. 1. Train your pause. Before you respond to anything emotional, stop. Before you reply, before you argue, before you act, breathe. Count to 5. Let the emotion pass. Then decide. That pause is not weakness, it's control. 2. Play the long game. Stop measuring progress in hours. Start measuring it in seasons. You can't build peace overnight. You can't master yourself in a week. Be patient with your process. You're not late. You're just learning. Every delay is data. Every pause is power. 3. Redefine success. Don't chase fast wins. Chase stable ones. You can't build something real if you're addicted to instant validation. Detach from the outcome. Focus on alignment. The one who moves slow but steady always beats the one who rushes and collapses. You don't need their timeline. You don't need their pressure. You don't need their approval. You move when it's time, not when they tell you to. That's the essence of quiet power. Patience gives you emotional clarity. Clarity gives you precision. Precision gives you control. That's how you dominate silently, not through force, but through timing. Because the truth is, patience reveals everything. It exposes who's real and who's reactive. It shows who's disciplined and who's desperate. It separates those who move with purpose from those who move with panic. Patience doesn't just make you calm, it makes you dangerous. Because when you master waiting, nothing can manipulate you. Not people, not pressure, not time. You control your moves. You control your emotions. You control your focus. That's what makes you powerful. So when the world screams, hurry, you whisper, hold. When everyone reacts, you pause. When everyone scrambles, you strategize. That's how you win in silence. Because you're not chasing speed, you're building staying power. You have a choice. You can keep reacting to everything that moves, or you can learn to wait until the noise settles and the truth appears. The loud rush into failure, the quiet wait into victory. That's the quiet advantage. Patience is not waiting, it's winning slowly. Every second you stay composed is another second you gain control. Every pause is a decision made from strength, not fear. Every delay is an opportunity to prepare. That's how quiet people move, not fast but forward. Not loud but lethal. Because patience isn't about time. It's about timing. And timing decides everything. You've learned how discipline builds results. You've learned how stillness builds control. And now you know patience multiplies them both. But there's another truth you must face next. It's not enough to be patient. You must also be detached. Because true control isn't just about waiting. It's about walking away when you need to. You've built calm. You've built control. Now you'll build distance. Chapter 8. Emotional control is silent power. Quiet people don't leak energy through emotion. They regulate. They recalibrate. They respond. That's power, real power. Because emotional control isn't about pretending you don't feel. It's about mastering how you feel when you feel and what you do with those feelings. It's not about suppression, it's about precision. That's the key. The loud react. The quiet respond. The loud explode. The quiet adjust. The loud let emotion become chaos. The quiet use emotion as data. And that's the difference between losing control and creating it. You have a choice every single time emotion hits you, to be driven by it or to direct it. Most people never realize this. They think feelings happen to them. No, you are not the victim of your emotions. You are the manager of them. You are the leader of them. You are the one who decides how they show up in your life. That's the foundation of emotional power. Understand this. Emotions are energy. Anger, excitement, fear, passion. They're all raw voltage moving through your body. You can burn with it or build with it. You can use it or waste it. You can let it rule you or you can rule it. That's the defining skill of emotionally intelligent people. They own their reactions. They don't deny their feelings, they deploy them. When anger rises, they turn it into focus. When fear whispers, they turn it into preparation. When sadness hits, they turn it into reflection. Every emotion becomes fuel, never a fire that burns out of control. That's what makes quiet people dangerous. They don't broadcast emotion, they channel it. Most people misunderstand emotional control. They think it means being robotic, cold, unfeeling, wrong. Emotional control doesn't mean you're numb. It means you're navigating. You're not a prisoner of emotion. You're the pilot. You don't suppress emotion. You strategize with it. That's why calm people win under pressure. That's why the quiet stay grounded when everyone else breaks. They've trained themselves not to react. They've built the habit of restraint. They don't need to prove they're okay. They are okay. They don't need to scream to feel strong. They stay strong. That's silent power. You have to understand how emotion leaks. It leaks when you overreact. It leaks when you argue pointlessly. It leaks when you explain yourself to people who've already decided not to understand you. Every outburst drains you. Every argument lowers you. Every emotional leak costs you focus, energy, and control. You can't master your mission if your emotions own you. So start watching your leaks. Watch how you respond when things don't go your way. Watch how quickly you defend yourself when criticized. Watch how easily frustration takes over when progress slows. Those reactions reveal your emotional habits. And emotional habits determine emotional outcomes. You can't control the world, but you can control your response to it. That's the beginning of mastery. Let's make this practical. You need an emotional control system. Here's the structure: track, translate, and transform. 1. Track your triggers. Start noticing what sets you off. Noticing is the first step to neutrality. When you get angry, ask, what was I expecting? When you feel insecure, ask, what am I comparing? When you feel anxious, ask, what am I avoiding? Emotion always exposes something deeper, and once you see the pattern, you can break it. 2. Translate emotion into information. Anger isn't random, it's feedback. Fear isn't weakness, it's awareness. Sadness isn't failure, it's reflection. Translate every emotion into a message. Ask what it's teaching you, then decide what it's worth. 3. Transform reaction into response. You can't stop emotions from rising, but you can stop them from ruling. When emotion spikes, pause, breathe, step back. You don't need to respond immediately. You don't need to fix everything instantly. You don't need to let emotion drive action. Emotion gives you energy. You decide where that energy goes. That's mastery. You have a choice. Live as a reactor or a responder. Reactors are slaves to emotion. Responders are sculptors of emotion. Reactors destroy trust. Responders build it. Reactors lose credibility. Responders earn it. And credibility, not charisma, is what commands respect. When you stay calm in chaos, people notice. When you stay focused under fire, people listen. When you stay grounded while others lose control, people follow. That's the quiet advantage. Because everyone respects the one who keeps their composure. Everyone gravitates toward the person who remains calm when others can't. That's not personality. That's discipline. It's not about suppression. It's about precision. That's the key. Let's be clear. Emotional control isn't easy. It's trained. You train it every time you resist the urge to respond in anger. You train it every time you delay your reaction until you've processed the moment. You train it every time you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. That's emotional conditioning. The same way you build muscle through resistance, you build control through restraint. Every time you resist the impulse to react, you get stronger. Every time you choose pause over panic, you grow sharper. That's how quiet people become powerful. They don't win every argument, they win themselves. They don't need control over others, they control their own energy. They don't chase peace, they create it. The truth is, emotions are neutral. They're not good or bad, they're tools. It's how you use them that matters. You can let anger destroy you, or you can use it to drive progress. You can let fear paralyze you, or use it to prepare. You can let pain define you, or use it to deepen your strength. You decide what emotion becomes. That's your power. That's your responsibility. And once you stop seeing emotion as an enemy, it becomes an ally. That's when you stop leaking energy and start using it with purpose. Remember, emotional control isn't silence. It's strategy. It's not pretending nothing affects you. It's knowing how to process what does. When emotion rises, you have a choice. React or regulate. Explode or evaluate. Lose control or lead it. You have a choice, always. And every choice you make builds your emotional reputation. People will know you as someone who stays calm when others crumble. They'll trust your judgment because it's not impulsive. They'll respect your presence because it's not reactive. That's how quiet people gain influence without trying. That's how silent power works. Because emotional control creates authority, and authority creates peace. So here's your mission. Start tracking your triggers. Start training your pauses. Start turning emotion into energy, not chaos. Don't suppress. Direct. Don't react. Respond. Don't explain. Execute. That's emotional discipline. That's silent strength. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. It's not about being numb, it's about being in command. You don't need their permission to control yourself. You don't need their understanding to stay composed. You just need the discipline to decide how you'll feel and how you'll use it. Because once you master your emotion, nothing outside you can shake you. And that's what quiet power really is. Control in motion, peace under pressure, focus under fire. You've learned to master your emotions. Now it's time to master your environment. You've built inner control, now learn to create outer dominance. Chapter 9. The quiet build unshakable identity. When you stop explaining yourself, you start defining yourself. That's the moment strength begins. Because the truth is this: people who constantly explain themselves are begging to be understood. Quiet people, they don't beg, they build. They don't need to justify their choices, their silence, or their path. They already know who they are. You don't need their permission to exist in peace. That's the key. Most people live as mirrors. They reflect what others want to see. They adjust their tone to be liked. They shape their values to be accepted. They chase validation like it's oxygen. But here's the truth: validation is a leash. The more you crave it, the tighter it pulls. When you build your identity on approval, you give the world control over your peace. When you depend on praise, you become addicted to applause. An addiction, any addiction, makes you weak. The loud perform for acceptance. The quiet act from conviction. That's the difference. The loud need the world to agree with them before they move. The quiet move and let the world catch up later. That's power. You want to know why most people never find peace? Because they never stop explaining themselves. They justify their choices. They defend their boundaries. They apologize for their standards. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't understand your vision, you dilute your power. You trade conviction for comfort. You hand over authority for acceptance. You don't need to do that anymore. You don't need their understanding. You don't need their agreement. You don't need their permission. All you need is alignment between your values, your actions, and your mission. That's identity. Identity isn't what you say. It's what you repeat. It's not what you post. It's what you practice. It's not who you are when people are watching. It's who you remain when nobody cares. That's the foundation of an unshakable identity. You see, quiet people are grounded because their self-worth isn't rented. It's owned. They don't depend on someone's reaction to decide their value. They don't chase affirmation to feel strong. They validate themselves through discipline. That's what separates the self-led from the self-lost. Let's be clear. Self-respect is not a feeling. It's a standard. You earn it every time you keep a promise to yourself. You strengthen it every time you say no to things that don't align with your values. You protect it every time you walk away from approval-based living. It's not about being liked. It's about being anchored. You don't need the world to approve of your direction. You just need to walk it with conviction. That's the key. Quiet people understand something the loud never will. Identity is built in private. You build it when you wake up early while everyone else sleeps. You build it when you stay focused when distractions call. You build it when you stop defending your dream and start embodying it. Identity doesn't come from talking about who you are. It comes from becoming who you say you are. That's the power of the quiet builder. Here's the truth. When you stop explaining yourself, you start elevating yourself. Every time you feel the urge to justify your choices, stop. Every time you want to prove your worth, stop. Every time you want to convince someone of your value, stop. You don't owe anyone a speech about why you live the way you do. If you have to explain peace, it's not peace. If you have to defend discipline, it's not discipline. If you have to convince people of your worth, you've already forgotten it. The quiet build confidence through repetition, not recognition. They stay steady while others seek applause. They walk their path not because it's popular, but because it's theirs. That's the mark of identity. You have a choice. Chase validation or cultivate self-respect. Validation is temporary. Self-respect is permanent. Validation fades when the crowd disappears. Self-respect grows stronger when the noise stops. Validation is about how they see you. Self-respect is about how you see yourself. You don't need to prove your value. You need to live it. You don't need to defend your path. You need to walk it. That's the transformation. Let's talk behavior. Here's how you build unshakable identity. 1. Replace external praise with internal pride. When someone compliments you, appreciate it, but don't depend on it. Let it bounce off, not sink in. Your pride should come from doing the right thing, not being recognized for it. It's not about applause, it's about alignment. That's the key. 2. Stop over-explaining your standards. You don't owe an essay every time you say no. You don't need to justify why you protect your energy. Boundaries don't need approval. They need consistency. Stop wasting energy convincing others to understand. Use that energy to stay committed to what matters. 3. Create a personal code. Know what you stand for. Know what you won't tolerate. Know what you'll sacrifice for your purpose. Write it down. Memorize it. Live by it. Because when you have a code, you can't be manipulated. And when you can't be manipulated, you can't be broken. That's how the quiet build unshakable identity. The truth is, identity isn't found. It's forged. It's built through repetition, not recognition. It's built through decisions, not declarations. It's built through solitude, not spotlight. When you start walking your path in silence, you'll lose people who only loved your noise. That's fine. Let them go. Because when you lose the need to be understood, you gain the power to stand alone. You'll stop needing reassurance. You'll stop fearing disapproval. You'll stop explaining every choice you make. You'll start walking with quiet conviction. You'll start moving with calm confidence. You'll start living on your terms. That's unshakable. And understand this, quiet identity is not arrogance. It's not pretending you're above others. It's simply knowing you don't need to compete for validation anymore. You've already validated yourself. You've already confirmed your worth through your discipline. You're not loud because you don't need to be. You don't chase because you attract. You don't explain because you embody. That's silent confidence. That's internal power. That's identity. So stop explaining. Stop performing. Stop proving. You don't need to convince anyone that you're real. You just need to live real. Let your actions define your values. Let your standards define your circle. Let your calm define your strength. Because when you build your identity in quiet, it cannot be shaken by noise. You have a choice. Keep seeking validation or start building foundation. Choose foundation. It's not about applause. It's about alignment. It's not about approval. It's about integrity. It's not about being seen. It's about being steady. That's the difference between the loud and the quiet. That's the difference between the fragile and the grounded. That's the difference between pretending and becoming. You've learned to own who you are without the need to explain it. Now it's time to take that identity and move with precision. You've built inner strength. Now let's learn to use it. Chapter 10. The Era of the Silent Leader. Leadership isn't about volume. It's about vision. It's about consistency. It's about composure. The loudest person in the room isn't leading, they're performing. The calmest one, they're directing the current without ever needing to raise their voice. Because the truth is this, the world doesn't follow noise. It follows certainty, and certainty doesn't shout. It moves with quiet conviction. That's the key. You live in a time where everyone wants to look like a leader. Everyone wants followers. Everyone wants attention. But attention isn't leadership. Followers aren't leadership. Noise isn't leadership. Leadership is alignment. Leadership is steadiness. Leadership is direction when everyone else is lost. Quiet leadership doesn't beg for trust. It earns it. When you embody strength, people feel it. They sense it in how you walk, how you listen, how you respond. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You are the conversation. That's silent power. Most people think leadership means controlling others. Wrong. True leadership starts with controlling yourself. If you can't lead your emotions, you can't lead anyone else. If you can't direct your energy, you can't direct others. If you can't maintain your composure when things collapse, you're just pretending. The quiet leader doesn't get rattled by noise. They don't rush to prove themselves. They don't panic when the crowd doubts them. They stay centered. They breathe slower. They move with intention. Because calm isn't weakness, it's command. That's the difference between those who act and those who react. You have a choice. You can keep chasing attention like the loud majority, or you can build credibility like the quiet few. The loud want to be seen. The quiet want to be effective. The loud want recognition. The quiet want results. The loud try to convince. The quiet just do. And here's the truth, the world eventually listens to the one who doesn't need to speak. That's leadership. It's not about charisma. It's about character. It's not about popularity. It's about principle. It's not about noise. It's about impact. People don't remember the one who shouted the loudest. They remember the one who showed up the longest. Consistency outlasts charisma. Discipline outperforms drama. Presence outpowers personality. That's the evolution of leadership. The world follows those who move with calm conviction. You've heard that before, but here's what it really means. When people see someone grounded, unshaken, and purposeful, they trust them. Because in chaos, trust belongs to the calm. When everyone else is panicking, the quiet leader stands steady. When emotions are high, they lower their tone. When fear spreads, they speak in facts, not feelings. Their silence soothes. Their composure commands. They don't need to announce authority, they embody it. That's the key. You influence more by example than by argument. Because real influence doesn't come from words, it comes from witnessed behavior. You can tell people what to do all day, but if your actions don't match your message, no one will follow you. Loud leaders demand respect. Quiet leaders earn it. And respect built on consistency is unbreakable. So, ask yourself, do you want to be heard for a moment or remembered for a lifetime? If you want the latter, stop performing. Start embodying. Let's talk about presence. Presence is power. Presence is credibility. Presence is influence. You don't need to enter a room and announce who you are. You let your energy do that for you. People feel leadership before they hear it. They sense it in how you stand. They see it in how you listen. They trust it in how you stay calm when others break. Presence is quiet strength. And presence is built through discipline, not ego. Here's your behavioral instruction. Led through presence, not performance. That means, when tension rises, you breathe slower. When others argue, you observe first. When pressure mounts, you anchor deeper. That's composure. That's leadership. Next, practice restraint. You don't need to react to every challenge. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. The loud leader reacts. The quiet leader redirects. You control the frame by not losing control. That's the move. And finally, lead by example relentlessly. Show up early. Stay disciplined. Be the calmest person in the room. That's how you lead. You want to command respect? Do what others talk about doing. Keep your promises. Hold your standards. Stay consistent, especially when no one's watching. That's real leadership. That's quiet dominance. Because you don't need noise to be noticed, you need consistency to be trusted. That's the truth. Every great movement began with a quiet leader, not a performer, not a showman, a disciplined force who moved with purpose. They weren't chasing followers. They were building direction. And because of that, people followed. That's the paradox of the silent leader. The less you try to control others, the more naturally they follow you. Because calm attracts chaos. Focus attracts distraction. Stillness attracts strength. You don't need to convince anyone you're capable. You just need to show them, silently, consistently, deliberately. That's leadership. You have a choice. You can be a noisemaker or a difference maker. You can lead through emotion or lead through example. You can chase attention or command respect. One path is loud but fleeting. The other is quiet but eternal. You decide. You don't need their permission. You don't need their applause. You just need your mission and the discipline to walk it. Because quiet power doesn't fade. It endures. It endures through failure. It endures through doubt. It endures through time. That's the legacy of the silent leader. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs direction. It needs composure. It needs consistency. That's your responsibility now. Be the example. Be the calm in the storm. Be the one they look to, not because you shout the loudest, but because you stand the strongest. Quiet power endures, and the world is shifting toward it. The loud era is collapsing. The era of the silent leader has begun. Move in silence, led through discipline, command through calm. That's your blueprint. That's your edge. That's your duty. You've built control. You've built discipline. You've built presence. Now it's time to sustain it and protect it from distraction. You've become the quiet leader. Next, let's talk about how to keep your focus sharp in a world built to destroy it. Conclusion: quiet doesn't mean invisible. Quiet means intentional. It means your energy isn't scattered. It's focused. It means your voice isn't wasted. It's reserved for truth. It means you don't chase attention because you are the gravity that pulls it. The strength of quiet people is this: they don't need the world's noise to know their worth. They don't react. They don't prove. They move. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be seen to be significant. You just need to stay grounded, disciplined, and patient. Because the calmest person in the room always wins. So, stop explaining. Stop broadcasting. Start embodying. Let your silence build your strength. Let your stillness become your dominance. Be the quiet one who moves mountains while others are still making noise. That's the real power. That's your edge. Now go use it.